Good morning, folks, and welcome to another great edition of Money Truth Moments with our very own Money Truth expert and whisperer, Judy Copenbarger. How are you?
Awesome. The money whisperer. I love that. Like the horse whisperer. I get it. That's really fun. Awesome. I'm
Yeah,
doing great, Carlos. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a beautiful sunny day, and I always look forward to our Tuesday show because I get to learn. I'm back to school, like a lot of our audience is sitting in here, right? So, folks, if you are just joining us for the first time, welcome. Make sure that you are following Judy at judycopenbarger.today. During the month of April, we've been talking a lot about finances and taxes, the good, the bad. I'm sure we've touched on some of the ugly, but in today's episode, we're going to talk about refund or owe, what it really says about your cash flow. And that's another important topic. So if you are just joining us and you are a regular as well, please make sure you share out the stream so folks can benefit from this. So what do you say we get started, Judy?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
So let me ask you, so why do people celebrate refunds and panic when they owe, right? It's like this either or, even though both outcomes just basically simplify or reflect money flow.
Well, we're human. So money comes in, we feel good. Money goes out, we don't feel good. So it might be evidence that maybe we're not saving enough. And that's like a forced savings when a refund shows up. I think more than that is probably the influence of the industry, and I mean the tax industry. So the people that talk to you about taxes are going to be your enrolled agents, your CPAs, your tax attorneys, people that are in that industry. So if you have somebody on the other side of the table in a transaction, like your tax preparer, you pay them to do your tax returns, they're going to really want you to like them and hire them again next year. And one way for you to have a really good dopamine hit to feel really good about working with them is to give you a refund. So I think a lot of times when I'm dealing with tax folks is they'll say, "Oh, you got a refund. That's good. You had to pay. That's bad." But the tax bill's the same, right? So it doesn't matter whether you pay it systematically over the year. The tax return time is just a true up of what you either underpaid in your estimations or you overpaid in your estimations. It's not a tax bill that you get. A lot of people misunderstand that. So I think sometimes just the attitude of the CPA will kind of trickle down to us. And that might be one of them. You feel good if you get a refund. You feel bad if you have to pay. But it's all the same money. The dollars is going to be the same line item, right? Same number. Make sense?
So, it actually leads me to a follow-up question with you, and is, why do people treat tax refunds like like you won the lottery, like it's a financial win, right?
Well, so for some people, it's rare to have cash in your pocket that actually jingles. It's like, oh, I got money once a year. Woo, I got money, right? So, and that might be it. It for people that, it's always a bottleneck. They're in a skinny financial time of life where it's just tight. And that's a lot of folks, coming out of COVID and with the economy that we had last administration, we had a lot of that. So I think as we recover, it'll make a big difference. But if people don't have a habit of having good savings or have enough where they feel like they can be saving, which I think is not a truism. I think everybody can save something. It's just the habit and the discipline of, and the maybe motivation to do that. But for some people, cash in the pocket is rare. And that would definitely give you that financial woo, when you get a few $1,000s all at once that might really make a difference for people.
It's funny, as we mature, right? Before we get to that maturity level, when you do have it cash in your pocket, it's like just burning a hole through it. Like, okay, I got this money, and what am I going to do? And as you're going, next thing you realize, it's like if it's $100, it's gone before the end of the day. It's like, what did I spend $100 on? And you don't realize how fast
I
that goes.
know. And that just, I've never had that. And maybe I'm just unusual or extraordinary or, weird. But I've never had that. But I know it's a real thing for a lot of people. I have it, I got to spend it. Even as a kid, though, I was always a stasher, not a spender. And I always had money. But I wasn't going to let something happen, and maybe it was attitudes of my parents. I don't even remember where it came from, but I always was going to be ready if I wanted something or needed something or somebody else did. I was going to have it. So I haven't really had that burning a hole in my pocket thing. Like I really don't like spending money. I prefer to give it away or use it. But I don't really like to spend it and have it like go away. So
I think you just came up with a great word for a new hashtag that I think are going to launch on this show, and it's the hashtag stasher. I love that.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah,
Well, as
because
a little girl, I always, I had little boxes I would put money in. I remember putting money up my doll's dresses to hide it. I even had places outside in the yard, in trees, and on there was a fence that we'd hop over and run over to the store, like the stop and go store, like 7-Eleven. I always had money outside hidden, and I'd bury it in little buckets. I mean, I just always was a stasher. So I like that. If I can help people have more savings or have more cash reserves available, if that's a struggle for them, we could call them stashers. That's okay.
remember, folks, it's stashers, not to be confused with slashers. Okay, it's a
That's
big
right.
difference.
Very different. Very different.
Uh, Thank you guys for joining us this morning. Please make sure you are following Judy at Judy Copenbarger.today. We'll talk a little bit more about her website later on. But I want to keep going in this momentum, and I want to talk a little bit more about like real life experiences. So, like, what patterns do you see in households, right, that consistently receive these large refunds?
Oh, happiness. Happiness, right? Well, all truth being told, I would say it might be something worth looking at. It's like, oh, I got a big fat refund again this year, and that's like the pattern. It might be a symptom of a failure to plan. I think it's worth looking at. It's worth reflecting on, why do I do this? Is it that I can't save on my own, or is it just I just like it when money shows up, right? But I think, if we're talking about the soft side of tax returns and how we feel about it, what we think about it, kind of that emotional, side of all of this, which is our topic today, I think it's worth considering, if I feel really happy about it or really upset about it, what's at the core of that? Where does that come from? Right? Worth reflecting on for sure.
So, I also want to ask you, let's talk just basic, simple education, right? How does withholding affect monthly cash flow throughout the year?
Hmm.
And maybe you have
Well,
some examples. That would be great too,
I do. I do. It really, I think it's about regulating your spending plan, right? So if you're withholding regularly every time, like this is going to be someone who gets a paycheck. If you withhold the right amount, then you know what your paycheck is, you know what you can spend every month. For some people, they need that steady, systematic savings. It might be that there is a consistency in your line item for taxes that really makes you feel good. But here's one thing, this is probably I'm right in the middle of this right now. So it's tax time. I've been working for the last few months with this company, and there's some partners in the company. And they put money in retirement and did that whole big thing. But this is the first time, the first year in their company, pretty new, right? Startup, but it's a big deal. It's the first time that they have to pay by the 15th, which is right now, April 15th, a quarterly tax for 2026, which we've already had that quarter. So now they have tax due for 2025, all the whole year, and they have tax due for 2026. An estimated tax payment is due. And IRS says, here's how much you have to pay. So a lot of people are surprised by that if they start a business or if they go to commissions after having been always on a paycheck system, a W 2 system. What you need to know, and I don't know how you would know this unless you have life experience or if you're in the business, right? If you understand finance or studied it for some reason. But when you have um, income that does not have withholding attached to it. Like every time you get a paycheck, they send money to the state. If you have state tax, they send money to the feds and all those other things that are missing. That comes out at payroll. But if you don't have a payroll, there's no payroll deduction. So you're going to have to pay tax at the end of the year. But IRS is a pay as you go system. They don't want to wait a whole year. That's why when you get a paycheck, the money gets sucked out right away. If you don't get a paycheck, more than 10% of the money that you owe doesn't come from withholding, which is a very, very low amount, then you have to pay tax not at the end of the year, but at the end of every quarter. And people are surprised to know that. So it's like some people, the first year they get hit with that double tax that's due in April. It's like, well, where's that supposed to come from? right? I
Right.
barely made money in my business yet. It's only been a quarter and I have expenses. So if you don't know that's coming, that's something really to understand. Quarterly taxes rather than annual taxes if you don't have withholding, and annual taxes if you do have withholding, but you're paying every time you get paid. So big distinction. Um, it's just really good to know. But that's the IRS rules. I didn't make up the rules. But definitely, if you just have the mindset it's pay as you go, you better be doing that, even if nobody's looking over your shoulder. The quarterly taxes come just like an annual tax with penalty and interest on the penalty if you don't pay enough. And so you want to not miss those deadlines and be aware that those are there. Make sense?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
For some, and I'm going to give you a quick follow-up question. So for somebody that's not that financial, what's the word I'm looking for? Keeps their finances in order, right? If you're
Mhm.
in a business and all of that. What would you say to that person right now that's just scrambling? You know, it's the 11th hour, April 15th, it's here tomorrow. What's one way that they can change their mindset and change things around?
Well, feel the pain. Sometimes we don't change until there's a big enough payoff to make a change, and the payoff might be avoiding the pain or feeling peace instead of stress and upset. And now, where am I going to find the money? And what groceries do I have to not get because now I have this tax bill, or I got to borrow the money, whatever it is, credit cards. So, if that's stressful enough, then the payoff would be to avoid that next year and start planning now for next year. And sometimes when you know better, you do better. I think most of the time, we try to learn from our experiences and mistakes. I would prefer to have people listen to this kind of a program and learn from other people's mistakes, or just take the advice, before you make your own mistake. But yeah, I think that can really make a difference.
And I think also that's very important what you just said too, is that folks, if you are joining us today, please make sure you share out the stream. That's the value of this show, that this is where you're going to learn what people go through so you can avoid it. So it'd be great for you to share this out, because at the end of the day, Judy's giving you guys tools to be able to utilize this so you don't fall in these potholes, or in these different scenarios where you could have avoided it had you just taken about 15 minutes or so to listen to some great advice. But I don't want to preach. I want to keep going because I got a lot of questions still to cover. So I want to ask you, how should someone decide whether their withholding strategy is actually working for them?
Hmm. Well, I think you got to take a really good, honest look. Just really look at what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Am I upset? Do I have fear? Do I have concern? Is it glee? What happens when you get a refund or you have to pay? Why do I feel this way? So this is kind of the soft side of the tax mechanics. There's the scientific side and the numbers and the just pay the thing and save the thing. But then the other side is, how do I feel about that? I got a big return, or I had to pay, or I don't like how much I have to pay. I don't like taxes at all. I don't think we should pay them. They're not legal, they're not constitutional. All that emotional side. That's kind of our focus today. But if we can take cortisol out of any production of cortisol out of any area of life, and financial is one of those aspects of life that just really kind of gets you. It's worth looking at these things and say, well, why do I feel that way? How can I feel a different way and lower the cortisol and just get more mental space to go do life, in a bigger, better way? That's what I'm really hoping for people that get hung up on this stuff. Like, I get hung up on things like technology. If you have to plug in a device, I'd prefer a person to that device. Really, I like people. I don't understand deeply at all software and hardware and devices and plug-in things. I like people. And so for me, I get a little, anxiety when I have to deal with technology stuff. But I'll tell you that AI, I mean, the more I learn about it, it is pretty cool. And I think at some point it's going to outthink me. It can't outthink my experiences in life, because I talk to a lot of people, deal with them, and I understand people and finances with people. But it's pretty smart. So anyway, that was just a long way to say, the soft side of the whole taxes, the tax returns, the cash flows, the reserves that are associated with that. I think it's worth really reflecting on, learning from, and then always, as humans, wanting to do more, better, different next time, next year, planning ahead. That's my goal here, to help people do that.
That's awesome. I want to see if we can squeeze in one last question before we get to the end of the show, and is why do people emotionally tie their self-worth, right, or financial confidence to basically tax outcomes?
Well, we're people. What we think and how we feel reflects our values, our experiences, our thoughts, our reflections of the past, our hopes for the future, all of that. We're emotional people. And so, how could you not tie it to an outcome of cash flow, money coming in or money going out, or what I have to pay or why or how much or any of that? Why would it not? And whether or not, some of us share our emotions a little more. Kind of live on our sleeve. What is that on your sleeve? You show your emotions on your sleeve, whatever that is. Other people are a little bit more, uh, button up their vest and they just kind of keep it to themselves. We're all on a spectrum that way. But we all do have feelings and thoughts about all of this. So I think it's worth looking at. If it's not something that you're comfortable with, if you're kind of a close your vest kind of a person, this is probably a good conversation. Maybe not comfortable, but probably a good conversation to help you kind of reflect on your own in your own little closet, right? For those of you that are like, wow, it's like, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm thinking. That's me, right? I think it's going to be a very comfortable conversation, but definitely one worth having.
Excellent. And folks, it is the end of the show, and you know what that means. It is our challenge, but I'm thinking, is it our tax challenge? What are we going to call this today?
Well, I wouldn't call it a tax challenge. It's a tax reflection challenge.
I like
And
that.
yeah, and this one, I always like pen and paper when it comes to a challenge, but I think it's worth just getting out your notebook or your journal or whatever you write in, or the back of an envelope, whatever it is, and just write down a couple of things. What am I thinking and what am I feeling about the results I got from my taxes this year? Hopefully you're done and you're not going to mail it tomorrow, right? Um, what am I thinking and feeling about that? I got a big fat refund. Maybe it was a wash and I planned for that. And it's like, yay, I wanted it to be close. So there's not a lot that I pay or get back. Um, what is the impact on the soft side of me, my emotions and my thoughts from that? And I think it's worth writing down. Um, am I stressed about it? Am I happy about it? Um, how do I feel? Was it a good result? Is there something based on how I feel that I can do more, better, or different next year? Maybe I want to get the big fat refund next year, or maybe I'd rather let the money work for me and then pay it at the last minute. Maybe I want it to be a wash and just have it be really, really close as I can and estimate that. But I think it's worth starting with the why, how I feel and why I'm motivated to do something different. And then what would that be? Write that down. That's your challenge.
All right, folks. And remember, we are here every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. with the replays on Thursdays at 8 p.m. And as always, if you have a question, if you have a topic that you would like Judy to talk about, please send us a message. If you need any help with anything, also, we'd love to hear from you as well. So until next time, any last parting words, Judy?
No, if you got a big fat return, save some of it. Maybe that's some advice. And plan for next year. So it is totally ideal. And we have this conversation next year, and you say, yes, I'm one of those people that is glee. I'm over happy. I'm just feel so good. That's what we want next year. So what's it going to take to get there? Do that.
All right, folks. Until next week, be safe. Take care.